Today, our journey will take us to the hills of Italy and the bustling streets of a Turin in full transformation. We will walk through the life of a man who transformed the destiny of thousands of young people using gentleness and joy as his only tools. We will discover how a small peasant boy, orphaned by his father and lacking resources, became a master of balance, both on silk ropes at folk festivals and in the delicate balance between guidance and affection. We will see how his dreams, populated by beasts that gradually calmed down, drew the map of one of the greatest charitable works in the world. This is John Bosco, someone who understood that the soul's journey passes inevitably through the paths of the heart. Before we take the first step along these ancient paths, allow yourself a moment of relaxation and focus. Adjust your body where you are now, seeking the most natural and comfortable position. It's as if each muscle receives permission to let go, allowing your shoulders to drop and your breath to find its own rhythm without hurry. The air enters gently, renewing your energy, and exits carrying away the dust of the day. You are in a space of safety and welcome. Time now slows down, and silence becomes the blank page where the life of St. John Bosco will begin to be painted in colors of peace. The mind now travels gently through the decades. The lights of the modern city dissolve into a horizon of earthy tones and deep greens. We are at the beginning of the 19th century in the rolling hills of Piedmont in northern Italy. The year is 1815. The setting is the small village of I Becchi on the outskirts of Castelnuovo. The coolness of the breeze descends from the Alpine mountains, bringing with it the scent of pines and wet earth. The sound that surrounds us is that of a distant chapel bell whose echo travels through the valley like an invitation to prayer. The houses are solid constructions of stone and wood, and life follows the natural cadence of sunlight. It is in this vibrant simplicity that our story takes root. John Melcher Bosco was born in a home where work was a silent hymn and faith was the foundation of every wall. In the barn, the smell of dry hay stored for winter brings a sense of providence and shelter. In the kitchen, the aroma of cornbread baking in the stone oven spreads and warms the environment and hearts. John's childhood knew the face of longing early, as the untimely death of his father, Francis, left the family facing immense challenges. However, this void was filled by the monumental presence of Margaret Okiena, a woman of unwavering strength and tenderness. Margaret taught John to perceive the divine through the visible. During summer nights, under the canopy of a starlit sky that seemed to touch the hills, she would point to the vastness and speak of the grandeur of creation. In winter, when snow covered the trails and the wind howled outside, the warmth of the hearth was the setting of stories of faith. Margaret's hands, calloused from working the fields, were the same ones that caressed her son's face with infinite tenderness, teaching him that strength and gentleness can walk together. Young John spent his days shepherding the family's sheep. The softness of wool beneath his fingers and the rhythmic sound of the animals' hooves on the damp morning grass were his constant companions. In these hours of productive solitude, he observed the growth of plants and the behavior of clouds. This contemplative silence was his first school of patience. He learned that each seed has its time beneath the earth, and that frost, though cold, is part of life's maturing cycle. These elements, the cutting cold of the morning, the warmth of the restorative sun, and the smell of earth after rain, formed a resilient spirit capable of finding beauty even in scarcity. Perhaps there exist in your childhood memories specific aromas or textures that bring comfort. There's a deep peace in revisiting one's own roots, remembering the moments when the world seemed immense and full of promise. John Bosco carried the smell of the countryside and the simplicity of the village where he was raised throughout his entire life, always remembering that what is essential is in the capacity to love and serve with gratitude. At 9 years of age, while the world around him rested, John plunged into a dream that would become the compass of his entire journey. In his vision, he found himself on a vast terrain surrounded by a crowd of young people behaving in an agitated and aggressive manner. Moved by the impulse to bring order, John tried to intervene with authority and physical force. It was then that a man of majestic bearing appeared, whose face emanated a luminosity so intense that the boy's eyes could barely bear it. A calm and deep voice resonated, guiding him to use meekness and charity to win over those hearts. Beside this man appeared a lady of sovereign aspect, dressed in a mantle that shone as if woven with starlight. She invited John to observe the field of work again. Where before there were boys fighting, now wild animals and beasts appeared. Under that lady's watchful gaze, these creatures gradually transformed into gentle lambs, symbolizing the mission John would have ahead. "Make yourself humble, strong, and robust," she said, leaving an unshakable mark on the boy's soul. John awakened with his heart beating hard and his hands still trembling from the intensity of the experience. This dream was the secret he kept in the oratory of his heart for a long time. Perhaps it is possible in this moment of stillness to reflect on the silent directions your own soul points towards. Often, our deepest purposes arise from subtle impressions or from an inexplicable peace we feel when imagining a path of surrender. The transformation suggested in John's dream was an invitation to see beyond the surface, finding the potential of light that dwells in every human being, however hardened they may seem. To approach other young people and share the beauty of faith, John realized he needed to speak a language they understood and appreciated. He observed with heightened attention the acrobats and artists who passed through the fairs of neighboring villages. Fascinated by how jugglers captured everyone's attention, John decided to dedicate himself to learning these arts. In his home's backyard, he stretched a thick rope between 2 fruit trees and began his training. The tension of the rope under John's bare feet demanded absolute concentration. The body's sway against the wind transformed the movement into a form of active meditation. He fell countless times, feeling the roughness of the rope's fibers on his hands, but he rose with a smile, persisting until balance became natural. He learned to make objects disappear with the agility of his hands and to perform acrobatics that defied gravity under the golden Piedmont sun. Sunday afternoons became John's stage. Under the shade of trees, he gathered the region's inhabitants and began his performances. The predominant sound was that of laughter and expressions of amazement at such skill. However, the ultimate goal was always to bring a message of hope. After enchanting the audience, he invited everyone to a moment of prayer and reflection, sharing the teachings he had gathered from the morning mass. John understood early on that joy is a key that opens doors often closed by the harshness of routine. Consider the beauty of this approach. Instead of imposing concepts, he used beauty and charm to create a space of spiritual openness. By balancing on that rope, he visually demonstrated that interior life also demands this constant adjustment between worldly responsibilities and the lightness of spirit. He became an artist of providence, using each leap and each trick as a step to elevate the thoughts of those around him. John's desire to follow the priesthood was a constant flame, but poverty represented a difficult chasm to cross. At 12 years old, due to family tensions with his half-brother Anthony, John made the difficult decision to leave home to seek his own path. The scene of his departure was marked by the silhouette of a boy walking alone on dusty trails, carrying his few belongings in a small bundle. The weight of that solitude accompanied the sound of solitary footsteps on the road, where fear of the unknown mixed with firmness of purpose. Don't forget, the boy was only 12 years old. He found work on the Moglia family farm, where he remained for 2 years. His hands, which longed to leaf through books, held hoes and guided the plow. The rough texture of the wooden handle and the intense heat of the sun on his back marked the long workdays. Fatigue made his muscles burn at dusk, but John transformed the effort into silent prayer. He saw the Creator's presence in the rhythm of the seasons and in the cycle of life on the farm, strengthening his inner resilience. Thanks to the help of generous people and his mother's immense sacrifices, John finally managed to enter his studies in Chieri. To support himself, he practiced various trades. He was a tailor, blacksmith, carpenter, and waited tables at inns. The rhythmic sound of the hammer striking the anvil and the smell of heated iron at the forge illuminated the young student's sweaty face. At night, he sewed with precision under the faint light of a candle, taking advantage of every minute of silence to review his lessons. Each of these manual skills was a life lesson that he would later transmit to his young people, proving that no effort is in vain when there is a greater meaning behind it. In 1841, John Bosco finally achieved his priestly ordination. Margaret was deeply moved to see her son, who had previously shepherded sheep, now clothed in the black cassock of Turin's priests. But unlike what many expected, the young Don Bosco, this is what priests were called in Italy, did not seek the comfort of rural parishes or the prestige of great colleges. Under the guidance of his mentor, Father Cafasso, he began a phase of deep observation and discernment, walking through the streets of Turin that was seething with the Industrial Revolution. The contrast of this new setting was palpable. The pure air of the mountains of his childhood gave way to a heavy atmosphere impregnated with smoke from dark brick chimneys. The constant sound of steam engines and gears from textile factories served as the backdrop to a devastating social reality. Don Bosco began visiting the city's prisons, places where the sun rarely entered. The damp corridors, the metallic sound of bars, and the smell of abandonment formed an oppressive environment. There, he found hundreds of young people, almost children, imprisoned for petty thefts committed only to satisfy hunger. When conversing with these boys in the gloomy cells, Don Bosco felt a compassion that was not merely pity, but a call to action. He realized that upon leaving those prisons, the young people returned to the same streets, without work, without family, and without guidance. His shepherd soul understood that he needed to act before crime happened. This transition was a period of sleepless nights and intense prayers, where he decided that his parish would not have marble walls, but would be composed of every alley and every square where a young person was helpless. He became a priest of the streets, someone who brought the divine presence to where hope seemed to have died. The practical answer to that anguish arose on December 8, 1841. The silence of the Church of St. Francis of Assisi reigned moments before Mass. Don Bosco, now a priest newly arrived in the city, was preparing in the sacristy, where the aroma of incense and ancient wood brought a sense of peace. It was there that he heard the sound of a commotion. The sacristan, zealous about the sacred space, was trying to expel a 15-year-old orphan boy, Bartholomew Gorelli, who was only seeking a bit of human warmth and shelter against the intense cold of the Piedmontese winter. With a firm gesture but a voice laden with unwavering gentleness, Don Bosco intervened. "Don't strike my friend," he said, disarming the conflict. He called the boy to a corner, and instead of demanding doctrines or knowledge the young man did not possess, simply asked if he knew how to whistle. That shy smile from Bartholomew was the initial spark. Don Bosco realized that the boy couldn't read, didn't know the faith, and had no one for him. Right there, after Mass, he gave the first class, not in a formal room, but in a heart-to-heart conversation. From that encounter was born what Don Bosco would call the festive oratory. But what, in fact, was the oratory? It was a place where every Sunday, young people who worked hard during the week in factories could finally be children and adolescents again. It wasn't just a catechism class, it was an entire day of fellowship. The oratory began with Mass, but continued with games in the courtyard, theater, music, and learning to read and write. Since they still didn't have their own headquarters, Don Bosco and his first young people were nomads. The rhythmic sound of hundreds of feet walking along the dirt roads on the outskirts of Turin became common, following that priest who smiled and joked with them. They gathered in vacant lots or open meadows. There, between one race and another, Don Bosco attended to each young person individually, listening to their problems and offering direction for their lives. The oratory was, in truth, a refuge of joy and dignity in the midst of industrial oppression, proving that the first step in evangelizing a young person is, above all, making them feel loved in a family environment. The search for a permanent location led Don Bosco to the Valdoco neighborhood. Initially, it was just a rustic shed known as the Pinardi shed. The simple walls and beaten earth floor would soon be filled with the energy of hundreds of boys. To give that place a family touch, he brought his mother, Margaret. Now elderly, she left the tranquility of the countryside to become the mother of all the oratory's boys. The aroma that would come to characterize Valdoco was that of the large pot of soup that Mama Margaret prepared daily. The smell of fresh vegetables cooking on low heat was the perfume of security for young people who knew well the pain of hunger. The oratory became a hive of activity. Don Bosco founded workshops where the boys learned practical trades. One could hear the rhythmic sound of saws cutting wood in the carpentry shop, the tinkling of metal type in the printing workshop, and the pounding of hammers on leather in the shoemaker's area. In this environment, he implemented the preventive system based on reason, religion, and the gentleness of affection. He believed that a young person must be loved in such a way that they themselves feel that love. Don Bosco avoided severe punishments, preferring the method of a word in the ear. He would approach each one, place his hand on his shoulder, and whisper words of encouragement and guidance, creating a bond of trust that no rigid authority could establish. Perhaps the feeling arises of the need for such a space in your life, a place where it's possible to learn, grow, and be accepted without judgment. Don Bosco created this oasis in the midst of industrial chaos. He taught that true holiness lies in the joy of living and in the loving fulfillment of daily duties. Joy was not an accessory, but proof that the soul was in harmony with its creator.
As evening fell in Valdoco, when tools fell silent and games gave way to serene weariness, Don Bosco gathered his young people for the good-night talks. Hundreds of boys sat in the courtyard under the starry sky. The air became cooler, and the only sound was the gentle, paternal voice of the saint. In a few minutes, he narrated a fact of the day or a brief parable, leaving a seed of light for each one's sleep. These moments created a feeling of belonging and security. The boys went to their beds feeling protected, knowing that someone watched over them. Now, as you listen to this narrative, allow that same feeling of welcome to envelop your being. It's possible to feel like one of those young people in the courtyard, receiving Don Bosco's words like an invisible embrace. There is no hurry, no demands. There exists only the present, filled with a peace that calms the nervous system and invites deep rest. The outside world may continue its accelerated rhythm, but here, in the oratory of your heart, you have permission to simply be. Don Bosco taught that education of the heart begins with how we treat ourselves. How about being a bit more patient with your own limitations today? How about welcoming your fears with the same meekness with which Don Bosco welcomed Bartholomew? The courtyard of Valdoco can exist within you. It's a place of joy, dignified work, and restorative rest. Feel that you too are part of this great family that seeks peace above all. Let the gentleness of the preventive system act in your thoughts, preventing the entry of anxiety and rigidity. Balance is a daily practice, a gentle dance upon the ropes of existence. Take a deep breath one last time, feeling as if Don Bosco's serenity were present in every molecule of air. You are at peace. Silence is your ally. The rest is your right and your necessity. May the images of the hills of Piedmont and the luminosity of the Basilica of Mary Help of Christians in Turin remain in your mind, guiding you toward tranquil and restorative sleep. The journey of St. John Bosco was permeated by challenges that tested his faith to the extreme. He faced physical attacks and persecutions from groups who did not understand his work. However, his serenity remained unshakable, like the surface of a deep lake. There are accounts of a mysterious gray dog, whom they called Grigio, who appeared in moments of greatest danger to protect him from aggressors, then disappearing inexplicably. Financial scarcity was another constant trial. The responsibility of supporting hundreds of young people without guaranteed resources weighed on the saint's shoulders. Don Bosco turned to prayer with a confidence that many judged impossible. Frequently, when the pantries were empty, providence arrived through unexpected donors who knocked at his door. He attributed everything to the intercession of Our Lady under the title of Help of Christians, humbly affirming that it was she who accomplished all the work. The construction of the Basilica of Mary Help of Christians in Turin is a monument to that trust. When walking through its interior, one perceives the coolness of marble walls and admires the light that passes through colored stained glass, painting the floor with shades of blue and gold. Each detail of that church represented a grace obtained and a thanksgiving for the protection received. For Don Bosco, the sacred was intertwined with the everyday, in each brick laid, and in each young person who found new meaning for life. Even facing physical exhaustion, he maintained astonishing productivity, writing books and thousands of letters to spread good. His pen glided across paper during the silent hours of dawn, moved by a love that knew no limits. He transformed weariness into offering, knowing that each effort was an investment in eternity. His life was a rope stretched between heaven and earth, and he walked upon it with the lightness of one who knows he is sustained by the hands of divinity. With the passing of years, Don Bosco's body began to manifest the signs of a life entirely given. His legs, which had traveled so much through Turin's streets in search of lost young people, became heavy. His vision, which had always seen the hidden potential in each being, was weakening. However, the brightness in his eyes remained intact. He continued to receive everyone with the same gentleness as always,
offering counsel that healed the soul's wounds. In January 1888, Don Bosco approached the moment of his definitive passage. The room where he rested was filled with reverent silence and the aroma of flowers brought by his spiritual children. He showed no fear, only serene surrender, like one who concludes a long and beautiful journey. His last messages were of encouragement that love and joy continue to be the foundations of the congregation he had founded. On January 31st, he closed his eyes to this world, awakening to the infinite light that had always guided his steps. Turin's welcome to Don Bosco was a spontaneous demonstration of gratitude. Thousands of people from all social classes filled the streets, walking in a silence that spoke of love and respect. The sound of tolling bells was not merely lament, but a proclamation of victory. He had proven that kindness is the most powerful force in the universe, and that a heart dedicated to a neighbor is capable of changing the world. Now, as you reach the end of this narrative, the invitation is to integrate the teachings of St. John Bosco into your own being. He showed us that education of the heart begins with how we treat ourselves. How about being a bit more patient with your own limitations today? How about welcoming your fears with the same meekness with which Don Bosco welcomed Bartholomew? The courtyard of Valdoco can exist within you. It's a place of joy, dignified work, and restorative rest. Feel that you too are part of this great family that seeks peace above all. Let the gentleness of the preventive system act in your thoughts, preventing the entry of anxiety and rigidity. Balance is a daily practice, a gentle dance upon the ropes of existence. Take a deep breath one last time, feeling as if Don Bosco's serenity were present in every molecule of air. You are at peace. Silence is your ally. The rest is your right and your necessity. May the images of the hills of Piedmont and the luminosity of the Basilica of Mary Help of Christians in Turin remain in your mind, guiding you toward tranquil and restorative sleep. I hope that the story of St. John Bosco has brought new freshness to your spirit and deep calm to your body. May the journey of this master of gentleness inspire you to find beauty in the small things and to cultivate joy as a constant prayer. If this moment of pause and reflection brought peace to your day, consider subscribing to the Sacred Repose channel. This is our shared refuge where we seek to rescue stories of light to illuminate our contemporary challenges. Leave your like and share in the comments what most touched your heart in this journey. Your words help our community flourish and allow this message of calm to reach more people. May Don Bosco's protection and the intercession of Mary Help of Christians accompany your steps and guard your dreams. May your rest be complete and your awakening be full of hope. Until our next story, may peace remain with you, today and always. St. John Bosco, pray for us.